Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So I held off on talking about the Trump moving the embassy, the Israeli embassy to Jerusalem. I didn't fully know what I felt about it. I knew I didn't necessarily like it, but I didn't necessarily, I didn't fully know what I felt about it. It's, oh God, this is gross. This is going to cause problems. This is going to cause conflict. But the thing that I guess that I landed on was the rest of the world unclear on the United States policy towards Israel? Was the rest of the world unclear? I think this is a horrible idea. I think this is a horrible idea from an action-consequence standpoint. That's contested territory. And the idea that the United States is recognizing it as the capital is problematic. That being said, we funnel that country billions of dollars. And even when that country goes through a process of military occupation and theft of land, the United States protects Israel. Protects them completely. The rest of the world condemns their behavior as theft and breaking essentially world law in this way. The United States protects them in that theft, in that stealing of land. And when Israel every so often goes out and mows the lawn, meaning murdering large numbers of people, they call it a war, but ultimately it's a massacre. They're murdering large numbers of people when they routinely do this. And that last assault that they had on in the Palestinian territories, they killed over 2,000 people, and 80% of which were civilians. 80% of which were civilians. They have an open-air ghetto, and they're essentially dropping bombs in that open-air, small space open-air ghetto. It's fucking amazing. We supported them. We backed them. Every step of the way, we backed them. In addition to backing them, we were also sending them military weapons. We backed them. That country has a nuclear power nation. We give them billions and billions and billions of dollars. Was the rest of the world, did the rest of the world not know that the United States was backing Israel full-throated? One president after the next makes this promise that they're going to move the embassy into Jerusalem. Donald Trump is the one that came in to do it. Look, elections have consequences. It's not that I like it. It's just going to be, there's a lot of shit that's going to take place in the next 3 years that I'm going to absolutely despise. This, to some degree, is action and consequence. You put up a weak milquetoast candidate that nobody likes, and that candidate loses to a reality show host. The failure of the left is the rise of the right. And we're in a situation where the right is going to do very nasty, disgusting things. But let's not pretend that this is not just a regular Republican. This is just a regular Republican. His tone is gross. He's over the top. This is just a regular Republican. That's the first point. I think that's the way I feel about it. The problem with this is the action and consequence. And this is probably going to be my mantra for today, action and consequence. The rest of the world condemns this behavior because the rest of the world looks at this and says, oh my God, he's going to set off a firestorm. Now again, it's the rest of the world clearly is not unclear on what the United States position was. So this becomes this kind of symbolic gesture that the United States is making. And it's going to piss off a lot of people. It doesn't necessarily matter that the United States had all of the support for Israel, even when they were murdering civilians, even if they were occupying foreign soil, even if they were stealing land. That doesn't matter. Moving the embassy all of a sudden is that's the thing. That's the thing. Look, I guess my issue with this is, yes, this is an issue of action consequence. This is the way people are perceiving the events, and yes, people are going to be massively pissed off at this taking place. So all of that's true. The rest of the world condemns the behavior. One nation after the next has condemned this behavior. The United States is officially a rogue nation. Congratulations. Britain is getting up essentially saying the Palestinian state is a real territory. That's been the response in the other nations. So there's a second point to this. I hope my point on that one is clear. It's this thing of, it's just giving context. I mean, I don't necessarily like the decision. I'm trying to give context to the decision. And the second point, oh man, I don't like calling out people at HA, man. I'm sorry, HA. We gotta talk about HA. I watched HA video. HA did a video. This video is called I'm not even going to play it. I'm just going to show the title. Trump calls Jerusalem Israel's capital. Liberals refuse to openly support Hamas despite outrage. Trump calls Jerusalem Israel's capital. Liberals refuse to openly support Hamas despite outrage. This video is 10 minutes. It's essentially 10 rambling minutes to get across a very specific point. If you're not going to support Israel, or if you're going to attack Israel, you should also attack Hamas and liberals. They refuse to, they refuse to support Hamas. It's a binary choice. I don't understand. If you're going to be this critical of Trump and you're going to be this angry that Trump is doing this, you're going to be this outraged, why don't you just support Hamas? Why don't you just support Hamas? This is the argument that what boils down to is, what the video really boils down to is, I'm angry that you don't give, I am bending over backwards to protect Donald Trump. I am making this case that because you're attacking Trump, and in this way you're not necessarily supporting Israel, you should just go ahead and support, Hamas, or just own up to the fact that you're supporting Hamas. I would like liberals and progressives and lefties to give more context to this in the way that I am not giving context to this. Like, it's an amazing argument. It's an amazing argument. Look, I understand if he wants to make this case that Donald Trump is right to do this, etc., but this is a horrible way to do it. I'm sorry. This argument, it is amazing. It's a breathtaking lack of context and somewhat of a dishonest positioning in regards to an argument. It just is. I'm sorry. And I say this to somebody who actually likes HA. It has nothing to do with HA as a person in a sense. It just has purely to do with the argument that he's making in this video. It's insane. It's insane. I even heard he criticized Abby Martin's perspective on this. I am going to do what HA refused to do in this video and give a little bit more context. Because I don't have this perspective of I am for Israel or I'm against Israel. It doesn't work that way. There is such thing as neither. Meaning it's not one of those things of you're supporting Israel or you're supporting Hamas. I don't know where this binary choice came in. There is a such thing as neither. You can give context to a situation without necessarily coming down on this, I'm for this or I'm for that. The answer can be neither. You're positioning. You're trying to create this thing of, well, liberals are outraged and these guys might as well just support Hamas or openly support Hamas. I don't know where that argument comes from. That's a strange argument to make. That's a strange argument to make. Stilted, strange, and it is a reach like nobody's business. And no, he does not necessarily make that reach. I call it rambling, and as somebody who rambles themselves, sometimes it takes you a while to try to get to your point. It was never a good one. I will put the link in the video at the bottom. You can hear it yourself. I'm going to give more context than what HA was willing to give. And like I said, I like HA, so this has nothing to do with him personally. This is to do with the argument itself. Let's be honest, what has taken place in Israel, and let's talk about recent history. We're talking about a military occupation of the land and them stealing territory in that land. You have a right-wing government who's in office, and that right-wing government uses the dog and pony show of a two-state solution in order to continue to steal more land. It's just a political positioning point. It's the same way the Democrats scream about the poor, Republicans scream about the debt. He screams about a two-state solution while doing nothing at all towards to push forward this idea of a two-state solution. He does not believe in a two-state solution. This is a dog and pony show in order to continuously steal more land, knowing full well that the United States is going to back him up in whatever he does. That's the reality of the situation. In the last incursion, they went in and killed over 2,000 people. I believe like 50 people or something like that got killed for their side. But they killed 2,000 people with 80%, more than 80% being civilians. 80% being civilians. If HA is unaware of breaking the silence, he should look that video up or look that website up. It gives testimony from Israeli soldiers talking about the orders that some of these guys had and what they were doing when they went into those compounds. Be honest. Be honest. I often say that whites in this country don't regard their history honestly. And this is not me saying HA is white or anything else. I'm just saying, be honest. Look at the situation and be a little bit more objective. That's what's taking place just as a flat fact. They're in someone else's territory. That's what's taking place. While they're in that person's territory, while they're in these other people's land, they took the land through a military conflict. At that point, they stayed. The people who were in that territory were stateless. Israel started to steal more land and build more settlements. Those settlements have been roundly condemned by every other nation on this planet. They have one backer, the United States. In the same way that the United States supports Saudi Arabia and they're starving of Yemenis, we have no issue with supporting right-wing governments, be it dictators or anything else, particularly if those governments are going to toe our line. Just like Saudi Arabia starving Yemenis, Israel is nursing an open-air ghetto that periodically they go in and murder the people in that particular ghetto. Now, they may say we have reasons and justifications to go in and do that, but ultimately you're talking about an uneven conflict that just boils down to a massacre. It's nowhere near close. One side has nuclear weapons. The other side has these makeshift rockets and sticks and stones. There are cases where a kid would throw a rock at an Israeli soldier and that kid would get murdered. They would consider it justifiable homicide. That kid would get murdered. There's a lawless region. Look, I'm not going to believe at that point. I'm just making this case of currently, this is where it stands. This is where we stand. Now, HA's point was, look, you criticize Israel, and look, there's some cases where I agree that we should criticize Israel, but maybe Israel has reasons to do the things that Israel is doing. This is where I get to this point of context. If you hit me, if you slap me, are you telling me that the person who gets hit and slapped in no way has just cause to actually fight back, or at the very least even to be pissed off? You're occupying somebody else's land. You have a military power in somebody else's land. You're putting those people in prison. You're abusing those people. You have an open-air ghetto where you're taking their land. And while at the same time saying they want to destroy Israel, you're making sure that those people don't have a home of their own. Now, are you telling me with a straight face that it is not as human can be when the person is slapped, when a person is subjugated, for that person, that group, to want to push back on the subjugation that those people are experiencing? Is that what you're telling me? Is that the argument that you're making in this case? Now, this is not the easiest thing, and this creates somewhat of a thicket. This thicket is not the easiest thing to solve. And whether you're talking about the United States, whether you're talking about Zimbabwe, whether you're talking about other areas of colonialism, these are not... Let me say it this way. Just because a person does good doesn't necessarily mean good things follow. Just because a person does bad doesn't necessarily mean bad things follow. I say that to say that we have a certain ideology that we focus on, or that we go by. Ultimately, right or wrong, it becomes somewhat murky in many of these situations. And you're left with this thing of action and consequence. Based upon the actions that you take, what are the consequences that take place? Human beings, we have a superpower. That superpower is decision, action, and consequence. We make our heaven, we make our hell, we make our lives miserable, we make our lives beautiful. And unfortunately, there are situations where things that took place in the past evolved, creating a thicket. It's almost like this way of energy being locked in on itself, where it's difficult to find a way out because you have some people who have advantaged themselves at the expense of others. And you end up in, I don't trust those people to do X. Not to mention, I am grassily uncomfortable with changing the way things are because we have an advantage in the way that things are. Now, in individual context, when people are experiencing something on an individual level, those people will take a certain position and those people will take a certain disposition. And you can't necessarily blame the individual for taking a certain disposition if they're living through a certain occurrence. But if you're not looking at the wider picture of why X, Y, Z is taking place, then yes, you can come down hard on one of the sides. Oftentimes, we find the situation where people who advantage themselves at the expense of others are in a position to say, how dare you? How dare you challenge us in this way? How dare you fight back? How dare you defend yourself? How dare you do these things? The United States did it with blacks in the civil rights movement. And Israel does it themselves. Israel takes the position themselves that these guys are wrong and these people are terrorists because these people are angry that we're stealing their land from them. Come on. Come on. You have a white cop that shoots a black kid. That community rises up, pissed off. Are they wrong to be pissed off that that kid got shot? What if you hear that it was a drug deal where the cop ended up planting drugs on him because you can see it on the camera itself? Are they wrong to rise up? Are they wrong to rise up because of injustice? Is there such a thing as righteous indignation and righteous violence? Is there? Is there at all? Now, I don't say that to back up the other side in this. I say that just as somewhat of a flat fact of the way people respond to situations. I don't have to support one side or the other. That's just me being honest in the sense of saying, yes, when people are brutalized, when things are being done to people where injustice exists, those people are going to respond in certain ways. It is easily foreseeable for people to be angry when they're being taken advantage of or they're being mistreated. That's the first point. The second point is you can't expect Israel to do something that's going to put their people at risk. Understand what I mean? It is not the simplest of solutions to turn around and say, look, we've stolen your land for God knows how long. We've treated you really bad for God knows how long. I don't trust that if we take this pressure off, that you're going to behave in a way that doesn't necessarily come after us for the things that we've done to you. They're not crazy for that. I just made that last spill that people respond in ways of, if you're treating us poorly, we're going to respond in kind. We're going to fight back. We're going to resist this stuff. Hamas is a direct reaction to the violence that was portrayed on Israel, on that particular region of the world. They chose a government that was going to be antagonistic towards, they wanted somebody to fight for their interests. They figured Hamas will fight for their interests. Hamas is counterproductive. Let's be honest. Hamas can be counterproductive. But it is immensely foreseeable. And it makes perfect sense that you would choose an organization that you believe is going to back and support your interests. That's not me taking sides. That's not me taking sides. That's me giving context. That's me explaining that, yes, if the person does this, this other person is going to respond in this particular way. It's immensely foreseeable for that person to respond in that particular way. It is easy to say that, hey, peace, give peace a chance. Be Martin Luther King's. You understand that part of the reason why Malcolm X existed is because of the failures of Martin Luther King. And I don't say failures in a negative way. I just mean you had a large demographic of the population that understood that it was being mistreated. And they couldn't get that cathartic, emancipatory revelation that they wanted out of King. They got it out of X. X was speaking directly to their angst and anger, and what they full well understood was mistreatment. Hamas is that force, that radical force that's taking place there based upon the mistreatment. I don't have to support Hamas. I don't have to support Israel. There is such thing to be said as these are the dynamics on the ground based upon the actions and the consequences, or based upon action and consequence. Based upon action and consequence. Israel is not crazy for saying, if we let this pressure off, are you going to come and hurt us and kill us? I don't think they're insane for saying it. In the same way, it would be disingenuous to say that it makes perfect sense for some kind of, there's a such thing as violence to rebuff the violence that's being put down upon you. Yeah, I understand that. But if I'm going to make that case, then the contrary case is also true. That part of Israel's reason for trying to keep pressure in this way is because they're somewhat terrified of, oh my God, we fucked these people over royally. And if we remove our boot, will they act in violence? Will they be pissed at us? Will they try to get retribution? Now, here's the catch with this. Even that needs to be subdivided. I'm not talking about people like Netanyahu who throws out this thing of this dog and pony show of two-state solution purely to steal more land. I'm talking about good-hearted Israelis. When I'm talking about stuff in the United States, I'm not talking about the immense hardliners when I'm talking about people getting on board in the same way that when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about good-hearted Israelis. They want a solution. Good-hearted Israelis that want a solution. That's what I'm talking about. Those people are not crazy to have some level of fear in their heart of, is there going to be retribution that takes place? And would that fear drive them to support somewhat of a strong man, even if they did want an honest solution to the issue? Yes. You've created a thicket. You've created a thicket. That is not the easiest thing in the world to solve, particularly when you have a right-wing government in office that milks that situation in order to stay in power and in order to steal more land. So that's the first point. This is not a binary choice. Neither is a choice. Recognizing that there is more ambiguity in this situation is somewhat of a choice. Meaning you can look at the situation, you can just be honest about the way this kind of appraisal of things and the way things are going down. It is immensely disingenuous to say that if you're not supporting Israel, then you're supporting Hamas. And if you're angry at Donald Trump about this, then you should just openly support Hamas. That's immensely disingenuous. That's immensely disingenuous. And that is a lot of water to throw in order to protect Donald Trump in this endeavor. Ultimately, that's what's taking place. You're trying to protect Donald Trump. That is a lot of water to throw. They're trying to protect Donald Trump. And in this cry of context, there needs to be context, you give zero. You give zero. Is there a reason Israel is doing the things that Israel is doing? That's somewhat besides the point. Is there a reason that Hamas is doing the things that they're doing? Israel is the occupying force. Israel is a part that has the military. They're the ones with the nuclear weapons. They're the ones that are occupying somebody else's territory. And to pretend. And besides that point, HA, my knowledge of HA starts with the Bernie Sanders thing. And I don't want this to go too long. Oh, fuck, this has gone way too long. The Bernie Sanders thing. And in dealing with the Bernie Sanders thing, we have this odd situation. Look, I guess what I want to get down to is he begrudges Palestinians for something that he himself has taken on. The Democrats cheated Bernie Sanders. HA was driven into hysteria by this and did one video after the next bashing Hillary Clinton and transformed his channel into just, we're going to attack Hillary Clinton and I am going to harness all those Trump voters who greatly dislike Hillary Clinton and I'm going to have a massive following. Good job. You have your massive following. But ultimately, all of this started because they cheated Bernie Sanders. You're going to turn around and begrudge the Palestinians something that you yourself are taking on. Meaning, if you're right that the Palestinians shouldn't in any way resist, shouldn't in any way fight back, and that they themselves are somehow wrong, and that Israel, for the most part, is just doing these things because of what Hamas is forcing Israel to do. These telegenic dead Palestinians, as Benjamin Netanyahu says. Why are you doing your channel? I mean, ultimately, under that logic, you should just fall in line with the Democratic Party. You should just bow your heads, and you should be okay with what's taking place. You got pissed off, and you did something about it once you got pissed off. In the same way, you're begrudging them for being pissed off and doing something about it. Yes, the scale is more epic, and yes, we're talking about this thing of life and death. But for the most part, it's the same thing, just as a lesser scale. You're angry that Hillary Clinton cheated Bernie Sanders, and I agree with you. I'm also angry, and I dislike it. I don't begrudge you for being angry about it. I think it's the most natural and human thing in the world to be. I don't understand how you begrudge them. That's my only point. This has gone way massively too long, and I'm pretty sure there's probably some rambling and repeating in this video also. You've lost the mission, bro. You've lost the mission. You've jumped the shark. And this may be your perspective on this. And if you ever want to come on to the show to have a conversation about it, you're more than welcome to come on the show to have a conversation about it. But this is not a binary choice. And if you're going to begrudge people in this way and saying, you know, lefties don't want to give context to the situation while making a video that in no way gives context to the situation. Okay. Yeah. I did massively disagree with your perspective on this. So I will end it at this. This is going way, way, way too long. I don't know if anybody even stayed till the end. But I'll end it here. Hope you guys enjoy the content. Thanks, guys.